Um, it's a specifically special scheduled lunch zone. I'm Ryan House. I am a PhD candidate at UWM. And with me today we have Ren and Morgan, rather. Sorry. I think that's it. Oh, and David's here, maybe.
I just joined.
Fantastic. Okay, so today we're playing Harmonix's FUSER as best we can on Twitch. We're going to see how this goes. I think one of the interesting things I think about playing this game on Twitch is that it sort of creates a metagame where I can't let a loop play for too long, or it will be recognized by the bots as, a song. So I'll have to keep switching. We'll see how that goes.
Yes, remix around the DMCA takedowns.
Yeah, so I'm really this idea to stream this game came from watching David play the Night Bear on Elm Street. No, that's not right. Night Bear Before Christmas fan game, and thinking about remix culture and authorship and authorship or whatever. So, I brought these smart people here to say that stuff while I just play this silly game. Remix while avoiding the feds is basically all hand labor. Yeah.
So what is FUSER?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I'll just sort of start by giving a brief little rundown. So it's a game from Harmonix, the developers of the first couple of Guitar Heroes and Rock Bands. We were just discussing that before the stream went live. Those series went to Activision, at least in the case of Guitar Hero, and sort of, I don't know, jumped the shark a bit. But Harmonix made the good ones. Harmonix is basically, I mean, like, they've done more things. They have some PS2 games even before Guitar Hero, Amplified and Frequency, which are, basically, Guitar Hero without the guitar peripheral. And I want to say they had one since then, before this one, but I can't remember what it's called. But essentially, FUSER is it's half video game, half music mixing software. The video game component, so there's a campaign, I don't know if you can see, there's a campaign that sort of essentially functions as a very, elongated tutorial. There's a lot of sort of things to do once you get actually mixing, so like this sort of scaffolds the teaching of all of the various ins and outs. And that's really video gamey. I think I'll play through one of those maybe, just to show you what it's like. But, there's elements where your trainer is sort of telling you what to do, and it'll have you drop a particular beat or type of genre, or, from a particular era. And then also sometimes there will be audience requests that are like, hey, I really want to hear Call Me Maybe. They don't actually say that. I don't know why I gave her that voice, but
well, yeah, because nobody would say that.
And that's how you score points, right?
Yeah.
And that's really fun. To be honest, though, I think where it really shines is the freestyle mode, where it's just sort of messing around. I haven't got to do the co-op freestyle, which seems really neat. I have done a few battles, but I honestly think I'm just playing against bots because I don't really know what I'm doing there, and I win. So I think they're just bots. Yeah, okay,
Apparently, we are a little quiet, Morgan and David.
Thank you.
Otherwise, thank you, Eric, for the shout out on that one.
How's that, Eric? Is that better?
Yeah, let's try talking a little bit.
Is that better? Everyone quiet. Well, no one's talking, so I don't know.
Also, if we get a serious play co-op FUSER, oh my god.
Yeah.
Let's get 2 streams taken down. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
that's what we call the stream.
That reminds me, I was going to record this, but I forgot to do that, so I'm recording from here on out. You missed the intro, but that's all right. You didn't miss any of the gameplay. All right.
It says we are still quite quiet, but better.
Okay, I don't really know how to make you any. I mean, I can.
Don't make us too loud, because I'm sure we want to. Well, I don't know. Make us do make us too loud, so we can block out the music and get rid of the DNCA takedowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys like this riveting gameplay? Just shout.
Do you guys like how inherently musical all of our voices are? Hi. We're vocal performance majors now. This is serious. I don't know. My brain can't come up with a pun. Someone help. Serious pitch. There we go.
I just ate.
I'm increasing your volume. Sorry, I'm just sort of standing here.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that's better. If not, I don't know. We'll just deal with it. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what this challenge is, but I'm gonna mess around with this. This is just sort of to give you a taste of what you know, the gameplay is like in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that you are this fledgling DJ turntable dude person, and you sort of work your way up into the main stage of the festival or whatever.
Okay.
Oh man, that's a lot of copyright.
Yeah, you start by filling in your crate with all of these lovely copyrighted songs. I think I'll probably just make do with what I have in the crate. You also have instruments that you can play, some different effects, and then what they call snapshots, which are like when you get a thing that you like going, you can take a little snapshot and it saves everything you have.
Macros, but for Mixer.
Yeah.
I like that. Interesting.
Nice.
All right, let's see what we got.
People come to Bachelor Stage to sweat. So let's get down to it.
Does the game offer you some like pre-made set lists, or do you always create your own?
Most of these will have a certain number of required songs that have to be in your crate, and then you sort of just fill in the rest. So, okay, so she wants me to draw the red, which is, so I'll have drums, bass, you know, like harmony or whatever, and then vocal tracks. And I can adjust the tempo, which is a little less than precise, but you can see these little dots. I'm pointing at the screen, like you can see that, but those are what's known as Dropins, I think, which sort of signify interesting pieces of the song that you can drop in. Oh, and I'm not paying attention to this at all, so I'm not gonna do well. Okay, so yeah, that wasn't so great. And sometimes your goals here on the side don't really mesh well with what the audience wants, so you just sort of have to pick and choose.
Sometimes the constraints are a bit too much, and you can't like play to both places.
Yeah, you can't make everybody happy.
Much like life, yeah.
So for these, it's a set time. They'll tell me. Basically, it will just end. And I have to keep the audience happy. You'll notice sometimes that I have a little meter here at the top. Oh, that did not work. Oh, with no vocals, because I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to talk and all this stuff.
Yeah, it's hard playing both as gamer and performer.
Right. All right, so that
And I
met that criteria.
like I got like a minor in percussion, so I'm not a musical expert. But what's interesting to me is how it kind of remixes the like a music score in like a different format in a way, because like a lot of music, especially a lot of pop music now, is kind of like you have all of those different tracks running, and then it's just about layering the tracks for certain segments of the song. And that's honestly a lot of video game music as well. Is like you have a continuous loop going, you know, on each bar, on each, you know, layer of the track. I forget what you shit. I think they're called separate tracks. And then you kind of choose, you know, when you're creating a song, you kind of choose which tracks to go, how long that loop's gonna happen. When it comes to electronic music. So it's interesting how that like remixes the traditional score, you know, you think of when it comes to like classical music, and how that score is different. And then that's remixed into like the electronic program, where it's more like loops and, you know, the interface isn't like individual notes, but it's more like the loops and that kind of stuff. And then you remix that again into this, where it's like just 4 separate, you know, records, basically. It's interesting how they represent it.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in the ways, you know, like I said, I wanted to talk about authorship a little bit, and the ways that, you know, in some ways it's an expression of my, you know, musical whatever, at least tastes. And then in some ways it's the game sort of directing me in ways, you know, both explicitly and implicitly. Here we have explicitly, but also, you know, implicitly just what's available for me to use in my remixes.
Yeah, in some ways it's not terribly different than something like RPG Maker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you create a generally speaking, the more accessible the environment becomes for creators to just jump in and immediately start generating and using assets, especially using pre-existing assets, the more simple those systems have to be. Otherwise, there's this like deep barrier to entry, right? And so I think to RPG Maker, because you can do a lot of really complex stuff with it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm sure you can do some relatively complex stuff here too. But like, you know, that entry level moment is taking those RPG Maker assets, taking the design paradigms that are implicit to that system and working on those.
Yeah.
You know?
I definitely agree, like, when you were talking about, like, access and, like, authorship and stuff. I think there's a difference between... I don't know if actually don't know if it's like an RPG Maker where you're, like, the assets as well as the game
100
versus, like, borrow people's battle maps and using battle maps and pictures and things and putting them into your campaign. I feel like that's slightly different. I mean, I don't know actually. Is it a different kind of authorship as a DM? Like, you can say, like, hey, I took a picture from insert real place here, but let me explain it how it is in the world versus an RPG having an asset in their game world that I don't know if that makes sense.
It's interesting because for me, when I've been thinking about like doing the fan labor stuff I'm researching, it's interesting because like the way I think about it is I'm researching it not as like a specific type of production that is separate from normal production in like the process, but more so it's like socially thought of as a different, you know, form of production. But what's interesting about things like this, about remix culture, I'm thinking of like 90s rap, for example, like rap tapes too, where like that is very much about remix culture.
Totally.
Right, or things like that. It's interesting because it literalizes and puts within like a physical form the ways in which like social production is remixed in some way, right? Because if we think of like how everything has a historical context, like every person who creates something is part of a social group, and like the stories that are told can be unique and new, but I don't know. Maybe it's more of my personal philosophy rather than like an academic thought. But I kind of feel like everything is a remix of everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So like for me, it's like when it comes to like man labor or like remix cultures, it's more so about the materialization of the remix nature of all creative output. That's how I think of it, like philosophically, or not even philosophically, just like that's how I think of it.
Like doing a remix of Into Song here is different from like it's different from like a song that you like rock off films because it's seen as a fan remix rather than a piece of music inspired by doing it.
Yeah, what I'm just saying is like what I mean is like all cultural production is remix, is taking elements of culture that have already existed and putting them to new contexts, or creating a story based off of that experience. Like for me, it's like everything is experiential, which means that
Yeah.
everything we produce is also informed by experience.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
so, like,
No, I mean I like that
Yeah.
a lot. This makes me think of Barth's, of course, Death of the Author, and also Foucault's author function, right? And both of those are basically about how discourses are made. And Barth's particularly is saying that, authors don't make discourse, it's the reader themselves making discourse through all of these different associations, right? But in, remix culture, that's sort of fed back through that same sort of loop, but back into creation, right? We as readers have all of these associations, and then we take the things that we're reading and make with those.
Yeah. Definitely.
I think the poetics angle relative to this is constraint, right? Is to understand the difference between different remixes as a matter of constraint. And I don't know to what degree, something like Paul Fussel's poetic meter and poetic form, I think I've got the name right there, and the last name's Fussell, actually discusses this, but it does get into the idea of like stanzaic forms, sonnets, whatever, as a way of gaining meaning and like denotation through constraint. And so if there's I think that augments onto the discussion of this loop, right? It's not just the loop itself of associations being made, but the loop being filtered through constraints. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. To that, I don't know, it's sort of to that point, maybe right alongside it, is the idea of selectivity, sort of that's where the question that I asked to David during his fan game stream was something like, is the modder or the remixer who is quite clearly using other people's assets from pre-made things, are they in any sort of unique position to be seen as sort of auteur just based on sort of that I don't know, our conversation was about how auteurism sucks because it's clearly a collaborative effort. But if the collaboration is already sort of on the face of the thing that's being created, is that remixer, is the person who is selecting those things, is the curator, essentially, sort of more in a privileged place to be seen as special or as an auteur. I'll let you think on that as I make this sweet jam.
I think
Can you see this guy floating? That's a weird ass bug that happens every now and then.
Oh, I gotta clip that. Holy shit.
I love
Dude,
it.
your jams were too sweet. You can't stay on the ground.
you just started floating away. I like this. I kind of like this idea of like authorship, but
That's not what I
being
wanted to do.
selectivity, because there's in the Minecraft community there's these challenge maps called Complete the Monument. It's a series of different levels, all very difficult. And usually there's one map maker who goes like, oh, this is the map maker. I can't think of any off my top. Vex is a really popular map maker.
Never know if you don't go.
But it's also widely known that, there's
You're an all-star, get your game on, go play, hey now.
There's like 20 people who go through maps and test CTN maps and all that kind of stuff. But he's kind of the one who is credited with the map because he's the one that maybe has Maybe he's the one that builds all the layouts and where all the spawners are gonna be. So I can kind of understand, see where you're coming from with that argument of maybe the curator could be classified as like the auteur versus
Down for me, fellas.
everyone else being centered around him.
Just bust the
Minecraft is
move.
kind of my own fan culture in some ways, so.
I mean, I think Minecraft would make a fascinating case study or example, because there's so much creative shit that goes on in it, you know. And it's sort of to Rin's point earlier about the constraints sort of feeding into that creativity, I suppose. You know, there's only, well, I mean, I don't know. I want to say there's only so much you can do in Minecraft, but they make emulators in Minecraft that run Minecraft, so.
Yeah,
They make
Minecraft.
working computers in Minecraft.
Yeah.
Like calculators and everything else.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I mean by everything is like a remix, because everything like all we want to talk about it in terms of genre, right? Like working within a genre, yeah, you're taking the elements of the genre and you're putting them to tell a new or somewhat different story, or however you want to think it. Or in terms of mediums, right? Like affordances, the medium affords you certain things, and how you choose to use them and put them together in new ways is like taking something that already exists and then putting your own work on top of it. I don't know. I'm not very cogent right now. But something interesting about Minecraft, right, is people are testing, pushing the limits of how far it can operate. They're modding it themselves, like the program itself. They're adding code to it, and emulating it, and like there's a bunch of different styles of labor that go into how far you can push. Which is also an interesting thing, right? And it's also something that we typically think of as in the development of other technologies as well, right? Like the development of movies is like people kept pushing to see how much graphical quality could improve.
Yeah.
Right, and the same thing's happening in like fans.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the difference between a constraint that comes from what we might call like a medium-based kind of constraint or an environment-based constraint. Like there are different ways to understand the limitations of a space, right? And so like there are constraints that are socially accepted parts of environments, and maybe most constraints are really this. Like I'm working in Minecraft, the thing I'm making needs to be Minecraft-like. You see this in Doom modding communities, people who are like, I'm modding Doom, the thing I mod needs to contain the primary game design directives of the original, product that I'm engaging with. And then there are people who throw that out because it's just a social convention to design around that parameter. But there are just things engines can't do.
Yeah.
Like Ryan can't just add a new song to this game without doing it without modding it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
That
you
gets a
can't
little
turn
into
this
hardware
into
constraints too, because if you were playing this on PC, that might be a lot easier. I'm playing it on Switch, so that's much more difficult,
Yeah, you gotta track your Switch to mod it.
Yeah. So those I would call environment-based constraints. They're different. I think they need to be accessed differently. Not that they aren't also social. It's just that they have this discrete architecture behind them that's a little bit harder to move around. I think on some level this all comes down to norms. And so on some level this is all, there are like actual physical, issues at play here. Also, apparently Morgan is very quiet.
I turned her up. Morgan, say
I'm
something.
sorry.
Yeah, I think you need to get closer to your mic or turn up your input or something.
Turn
We're
it
gonna turn
up.
this into an ASMR stream.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Everyone is.
Oh no, I'm gonna pump myself up too then. Give me nice and loud. I'm putting myself on red. I don't even care.
What's funny is you guys are
flipping.
incredibly
Oh, no.
loud to me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I think the music, if the
That
game
might be
could
what
be
it is.
turned down a little bit, that might be good.
I can manage that.
Also, I one day we'll get Voice Meter Banana fully working. I mean, it is working. I just don't. have a guide.
I don't know how to do
We'll
that.
fix this up. I know it'll be a guide. We'll get it. Look, man, audio stuff's hard.
It is. I don't like it. It's
If you
hard.
just pointed me
I have
to
my
where
little
to download it.
box. I have my little Focusrite box, and I rely on that now. What I think is interesting though, and this is something that, as somebody who has done some fan labor but isn't a whole lot of it, is that it is kind of it's socially thought of as a different form of production, right? But the effects, the mechanics of it are different in some ways, but also like, because Ryan was just talking about the Switch, right? And like
Yeah.
how modding, and for an individual, modding the Switch is a whole lot more difficult than like, say, like modding the same software on a PC, right? But I also wonder then, how does the testing, and this also gets into playtesting a little bit, which of course is its own form of exploited labor. But like, how do these companies then, like, they have people who all they do is like try to hack into these systems to make them form better, right? But instead of calling it hackers, we call them, production people. I don't know the official term, right? But like the testing of graphical limits is within the industry itself, and it's also within the fan labor, and so like it's just articulated and socialized in different ways.
Yeah.
But the behavior, I think, is very similar, but it's just not viewed in the same way.
Yeah, and I think there's a socially a different attitude towards like fan labor versus what people are doing in the industry is is authorized per se. They it's their job to break into consoles and fuck with it and mess with it and see what they can get out of it.
Yeah.
Whereas a fan labor is they're quote unquote breaking the rules. It's like people who make iPhones versus iPhone users. They don't.
Yeah.
Phone manufacturers don't want you within your phone fucking it up, messing with it. But they can do that because they're allowed to, quote unquote, allowed to.
Yeah.
So I think that's where that difference in perception comes from. It's like,
Oh,
you're
yeah,
messing with my
totally.
product versus I'm messing with my product. It's kind of that.
I got
Totally,
both
and
those
like
sides.
I'm not saying it's
Sorry.
the same labor, right? But I think a lot of what I read is that it's viewed as not a socially articulated different form of labor, but it's often treated as like an inherently different form of labor, which I don't think it is.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Feel free to throw out some suggestions if you see something you want me to play with.
I love Groove is in the Heart.
All right, yeah, Groove in
That
the
song
Heart.
is so
I
good.
actually just bought that one on the DLC.
So good.
$2, eh? It was $2, but I
Wow,
bought
wow, a regular iTunes store.
it. Yeah, for not even the whole song. It's like 45 seconds of it or something. I don't know. That will do some
Yeah,
satisfaction. That's good.
That's always the It's always the issue with like musical songs. I remember like this is like off tangent, but I remember Cyberpunk. People were angry at Cyberpunk for bowing to the DMCA. But I'm like, it makes sense business-wise if you want your game to be advertised on Twitch or on YouTube
Yeah.
to allow streamers to go around the content ID. Because Cyberpunk, in theory,
Not that streaming that game was easy for other
Not that,
reasons.
no. Well, this was before. This is like the argument before things were happening. Before all this, the
Get rid of
things hit the fan. But Cyberpunk has the rights to the music that they bought. But technically, the streamers don't.
Right.
So it makes sense why the DMCA, that might be why Harmonix doesn't get taken down, because they technically bought the rights
Yeah.
for their game to have that music in it. And it's, I don't think the rights, radio rights is correct. I will say that now. I think it's
and
capitalist
radio
pig,
rights.
but it makes sense in our capitalist world for them to have that option.
And I guarantee you, in those deals that they've signed, they have they probably have
All-Star
like
cursed remix or something.
specific bylines being like all streaming, etc., are not given this, like, by buying this product, they're not given the right to stream this.
Yeah.
They don't
I mean-
make that explicitly clear, but I bet that there is some language somewhere. Yeah. There's not
There's
like
some,
some
like-
disclaimer that comes up when you start the game.
There's
or
some like
anything.
TOS or something where it's like, hey, by the way, welcome to our game. By the way, you might not be able to stream this, but welcome to our game.
All right, we're gonna do a Rick rolling Smash Mouth mashup.
That's the most cursed thing.
It's gonna be great.
Are all of these stages like super huge festivals, or
Yeah.
are there? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there were like some house party vibes, or
No,
'cause
it's
that would be an interesting, different kind of situation.
it stays pretty. It adheres pretty strictly to the big festival vibe. What did I say? Oh, Rick Rollin, right?
Rickroll.
Where did that go? Where did he go?
Never gonna give you up.
Oh, there he is, right next to me.
It is interesting because something like Guitar Hero, I remember playing that, and there's like the variety of venues where it's like I remember I played World Tour because that was on the Wii.
You poor boy.
And like the narrative, quote unquote, like the campaign mode, right, is like you start out as like this low band, and then you like slowly like work your way up to like these huge festivals.
Yeah.
And so like even though there's no like narrative verbiage, right, the just the locations of it tells you the arc of the story and how much money you technically get in game.
Yeah, and I think Guitar Hero and Rock Band is much more interested in that campaign mode,
Yeah.
Whereas in, like I was saying with this one, it's essentially just an elongated tutorial, which is necessary because I'm not even messing with half the shit that you could do in this game. Such as the filters Rin mentioned earlier. I was messing a little bit with it, but like doing filters, you can do it for individual discs, or over here you can do it for the whole tread. I don't know DJ terms.
Desk?
Yeah.
No,
all right.
I don't know.
Deck.
It might be desk.
Deck.
Deck.
Yeah, that's what it is. You have these risers where you can like queue a bunch of songs and either remix into like its set beats per minute, or just keep it steady. You can change key. And mode.
Change the key. Go major, minor.
Yeah.
Gotta
All right.
follow from FUSER game.
Hey, FUSER game! Thanks for following. I'm playing your game right now. Maybe you can help us with the DCMA problems that we'll probably get later.
They might not be on Twitch, but they probably will be on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Sounds good. See,
Yeah.
Ryan, you're a pro at this. You don't even need all of those extra features.
Right?
You can just put All-Star and never give you up together, and it'll be great.
Yeah, just make only cursed memes for the rest of your life.
Make career.
All right. I'm
But yeah,
really.
we,
yeah.
I was just gonna say we were chatting about other
They just gave us the
streaming guidelines. Thank you.
Oh, hey, awesome. That's good to know. It's probably just like don't play any more than 10 seconds of a song.
Let's see.
We're not able to monetize. No, this is actually great that you added this because like this is
Totally
literally
is.
what we were talking about.
Yeah, it really is.
We can archive UGC on YouTube, which is great, and it should make sure everything is in context of gameplay.
Okay.
I don't know
Cool.
what that means, but okay.
Basically, it just like it needs to be gameplay footage. It can't just be like, hey, I downloaded the audio from this video and then I like made my own audio with it.
Just play Justin Timberlake's "Rock Your Body" over something else.
Yeah, and you're like, I made this really cool mashup, but it's just the audio from this video.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
I see. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Like someone making music with FUSER and then like separating it
Yeah.
from the gameplay. I can okay.
So what I really need to do then is vocode all of us, and then remix Lunch Zone and put that on the YouTube channel.
But this is cool. It's cool that and honestly, like clicking on the link, and I'm not just saying that because FUSER's right here, but like it is nice when talking about like fan labor, remix cultures, Twitch, etc. It is kind of nice to be like, for a game to be like, hey, these are just like the 5 rules you need to follow. about this on Twitch.
Yeah.
Which, because Ryan was just saying, right, that like for a lot of gaming companies, it's very much like we're just going to say like the most general thing ever, so we can wash our hands and keep keep clean of everything.
Yeah, having those,
It's
having
nice
those,
to have this solid.
yeah, which I assume is sort of researched and backed by a healthy legal fund, right?
Yes.
It's not just it's not just nobodies making these up.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I kind of find it interesting because the streaming, it started with like indie games saying, hey, if you stream this, like tag us. Like very much a lot of the indie
That is what I
games
just did.
marketed themselves by saying, hey, streamer, stream this, and then if you want to tag us, you can, but also like we won't DMC, we won't claim you if you play our games, we just want it to be out there. And it's kind of evolved into more well-known companies like Cyberpunk is an example that came with Brain, or like Harmonix like releasing a, hey, if you want to stream our games, this is what would be a good idea. I will say that this one that they sent was very much creator focused, like, hey, like this is a good idea for if you want to do things like this. Whereas Square Enix released one for Final Fantasy 14, and they had like copyright things. They were like, you can separate certain music out from raids, but not other things. They were very specific, and they were like, and if you play Answers, there's a very specific song from the game that they use in almost all of their trailers. If you use that song, you will immediately get DMCA'd. So don't. So they were very specific of like, this is what our copyrighted material is, this is what you can do, and this is where you're going to get claimed. And so it's kind of more less creator focused, I think, much more company focused.
Yeah, and that's hard too when you're doing something like Twitch streaming, where so much of the language is so like in the legalese,
Yes.
right? And then they're just like, well, we told the gamers to read this thing before they signed on, right? But it's within this huge it's in this huge document about rights, and it's all in the language that is like inherently designed to not be approachable to streamers or gamers, especially when so many people doing this work are like teenagers.
Teenagers or like people who just somehow video games.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, this was a long time ago, but Nintendo attempted to
Aha.
have very
Sorry.
strict guidelines on what will and will not be streamed. That did not go well.
No.
They backed off of that, obviously, but it was scary because a lot of people were like, I made my whole living
Shit.
playing Mario speedruns and Pokemon. Like, what am I gonna do? So, but yeah. Also, if this game has Teenagers by MCR, Teenagers is a pretty good song by MCR. I still would say Not Okay or Helena is my favorite MCR song.
I don't know if I've unlocked that one, or do you have to buy it?
I have no idea.
I don't know what
I
MCR is, to be honest.
I
with you.
just said the word
My
teenagers and I
Chemical
got
Romance.
excited.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things where, what's MCR? My Chemical
Oh, is Seven Nation
Ah!
Army on its way?
I don't know. Seven Nation Army.
Yeah, it seems like the catalog is like very more like pop oriented, which I again makes more sense with this kind of style. But
More for
Yeah.
like
I love
things.
I love the rock aesthetic of rock. That's cool too.
They have-
Or
I want to be a
or
rock
guitar.
band.
yeah. It's coming out tomorrow. Ooh.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, all right, I'll buy that one. I've got some
Cardi B.
Nintendo Gold points burning a hole in my pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess also one of the things to talk about with like fan labor is the companies involved. Because like we were talking about Minecraft earlier, and Minecraft is very much a like Mojang made it a point when they sold it to Microsoft that the Java edition would always remain free,
Oh,
remain
cool, yeah.
open to modders. Like they're like, you can do whatever you want with Bedrock, we understand that, but Java will stay existing and modding will not be monetized. Like whatsoever. It was one of their things. And where versus I can imagine like companies have different attitudes with what they let their fan gamers get away with. Like Nintendo allows people to like remake Pokemon games, which is cool, but also like it's like not really monetized. If you try to monetize it, they'll come after you.
Oh yeah.
Sort of thing. So that's kind of an interesting thing maybe to talk about, is the allowing of fan culture versus not.
Well, and there's so like there are some games that like will set up like marketplaces for mods too, which then gets a whole lot into a lot of sticky territory with that, right? Because it also opens up the potential for like exploitation of fan labor. It's a lot of sticky stuff there.
Yeah. I think like Second Life had it where you could actually sell assets with real life money or in-game currency. It was like this interesting thing where like they expected people to make stuff for fan labor and also be able to monetize it, but that was like in the early 2000s. Things have definitely moved in weird ways since then.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Second Life right now, and they have a marketplace. They call it Second Life Marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if Second Life exists in any capacity anymore. It's one of those like.
It says you can download Second Life.
PhD Simulator. I get in a rut with bad guy really easily. Like, I tend to start most of my mixes when I'm just messing around with 2 bad guy basses and then the bad guy drums and build from that. But if I'm not careful, I'm just playing bad guy.
Everything is bad guy. Everything leads to bad guy.
There's a reason why it became a big hit. That bass line is.
It's so good.
killer.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've ever listened to Bad Guy.
I think it's like, kind of a good thing most of the time. I mean, it's good to have like beats to come back to, so you're cycling back and getting those refrains in there,
If you remind me in just a minute, I'll go when if I restart, I'll show you all of my, what are these called? Snapshots, and like so many of them have at least one bad guy. Let's see what this is.
Well, and that's really indicative of a lot of fan culture or remix culture in general. It's like there are just those certain things that get circulated again and again, or like the same remix because there's something catchy about it. I'm not gonna go into an aesthetics thing because I'm not versed well enough to talk about that. But like the game also like lets you do that, where it's like if you find something that's really catchy and you want to keep using it, like you can, and that's also something that happens in fan communities.
Well, this is, repetition. We're talking about constraints. Repetition is a constraint, but it's a necessary constraint, It's difficult to create a creative work that makes effective meaning without a little bit of something to come back to and hit again and again and again. And I guess you can take that from a pedagogical perspective. You can take it from a lot of different perspectives. I think especially in music, right, and in crafting of music, and I'm not somebody who writes music in a meaningful way, but the necessity of repetition is to establish this sonic pattern that you can then make those changes to, and then those changes become meaningful because you've established the pattern. Also, full disclosure, I listen to a lot of folk music, so that is why that is my understanding of how this stuff works.
And I only know a little bit of pop music, but I know like rappers will like use similar beats, or they'll do like a take on a song, and then it becomes like a thing. It's like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people will like do a take on Nicki Minaj just did Barbie Dreams. I forget what that's like. I shouldn't say just, it was a couple years ago, but that was like a take on a Biggie's Notorious B.I.G. song, a rap.
And I think like remix culture, a really good a video I watched about 50 Shades of Grey was like 50 Shades of Grey has a lot of things in it that really evoke its fanfiction roots, because fanfiction assumes you know the thing you're reading, Like,
Yeah.
you know the world that you're reading. So it's like 50 Shades of Grey was a Twilight fan fiction.
Yeah.
So it assumed you knew Twilight when you went to read this. And so there are certain things that slip through the cracks in 50 Shades of Grey just because it was a fan work.
That gets us back to that idea of the author and the reader as the I don't know, progenitor, I guess, of the discourse, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I can't remember her name. Stephanie Meyer? Is that who wrote?
That's who wrote.
Yeah.
So Stephanie Meyer wrote Twilight.
Okay.
And then
The other one then.
E.L. Gray.
E.D. James?
E.L. James.
E.L. James.
got
Okay.
there.
So
Got
E.L.
there.
James then is
EMTJ.
remixing, right? She's a reader, but then she also, you know, takes in all of that information and then pushes it forward into essentially a remix that is about, you know, butt plugs or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not wrong though, right?
Don't. Yeah. And I think. Yeah, because like there's a lot of fan fictions that are crossovers. Like, well, I really like Supernatural, and I also really like Harry Potter, so I'm gonna put them together and make the two characters
God.
kiss who are not supposed to kiss. We're not gonna go in there.
Not the Super Hulock discourse.
Oh wait, these are actually I just picked two
Oh my
random
god,
series.
Super Hulock. No,
I mean-
Super Hulock was like a notorious fan culture on Tumblr.
To like,
I won't get into it.
But like, yeah, they're remixing two of like fan fiction is just like music remixing, except with different mediums. But anyway,
and this is like a thing with you know, again, I keep coming to poetics for this because it's where my brain's at. But like, this is rhyming and finding things that have similar structure, right? Like it's easy for me to take stanzas out of one poem and stanzas out of another poem if they're using the same meter and smack them together and maybe
Yeah.
make something valuable because you're more likely to accept that those things belong to each other because they have the same progression.
yeah, there's those
Herlock,
smashups.
Super
go ahead.
Hulock, Supernatural, Doctor Who, Sherlock. Obviously, there's a reason that Doctor Who and Sherlock have a similar progression. You know, that's Moffat most likely, or at least it's the people around Moffat that are establishing
BBC.
a heavy, yeah. Supernatural happens to have some of those same resonances that those other shows have, and the way that it's designed and the way it progresses, and so smacking those discourses together creates, I think, a similar kind of thing. There's an interesting, I think, conversation to be had about authorship and remixing and the pleasure idea of like, you know, when we're attaching things to each other, we want them to feel right. We want them to sound good. We want them to resonate in a way that's useful and meaningful.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's all of it, right? Because then you get into the question of like discord and what discord, you know, creates in a work. But like when you're doing something very simple as far as like or you're not going into that depth and you're just saying, okay, well, I want in FUSER, I want this to sound good. I want this to be pleasurable. I want this to progress.
Is this
Where is
pleasurable?
that? Where is that feeding into? Like, is that feeding into some sort of idea or conception of pleasure? Is it not? Is that reducing it? You know?
Yeah. I also think. Oh my god, my brain just died. Like Smashups for the things, people always get really confused when two songs work really well together. Then they go, well, they're at 60 tempo. 60 tempo is everywhere. Of course they're going to mash up because they're at the same tempo and the same key. So like people find it really satisfying to hear these two things, incongruent things, put together so it looks, so it feels the same, feels kind of interesting and new, but also the same. It's kind of satisfying to be like, this is new and weird, but also I like it. And why is it such a banger? Like, why would Never Give You Up and insert random thing work really well together? It doesn't make sense, but also it sounds good. It's kind of that surprise.
That brings up a really interesting aspect of this game in that it does a lot of that behind the scenes. You know, there's quite a bit of black box here because I'm clearly just sort of picking songs at random sometimes, but and I'm not really sure how the game determines, you know, what beat per minute is gonna sort of be the baseline. I would imagine whatever is the first one that you drop is sort of what sets it, and then everything else that you drop sort of just meets that.
Okay.
But I mean, yeah, as a piece of software that's pretty amazing that, you know, like, you don't really have to think about that kind of stuff. You can just start dropping stuff and it will sort of, you know, it finds its own equilibrium in that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But it also like, you're right. It says that there's a logic behind the scenes going on that's like got some sort of ethos to it.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh man, yeah, this is what the player wants. This is what they want. Like I said, I am not. Let me just make it clear, I'm not a Freudian. I'm not a big fan of psychoanalysis. So when I say pleasure, I do it through graded teeth. But like, I'm inclined to believe that that's probably the ethos here, is how do we make it easy for the reader to derive a sense of pleasure and ergo fun, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think that's why it uses a lot of pop stuff and it has a certain aesthetic to it that gets you. Because if it was like DJ Hero, which
I've never played that. I would like to. If you've
yeah.
got some comparisons, I'd love to hear them.
I watched it like once or twice, but like DJ Hero, like you do, like it kind of replicates rap scenes in a sense where you're actually spinning records and things and making, like you're remixing it into, like sampling. It seems more sampling based than like remix based. I don't know if that makes any sense. Then looping and that kind of stuff. So it's much more like, hey, we're gonna play this song by Biggie Smalls and like scratch the record a little bit to make it sound cooler. That's kind of what it seemed like. So it's much more like Guitar Hero with a DJ deck, sort of like with a spinning thing. Which makes sense. Who made it?
Did Harmonix make that?
I believe it was Rockstar. Rockstar and Harmonix did the thing, and then Harmonix left, and then it was Rockstar. Not Rockstar. I don't remember who it was.
Activision?
Activision. There was another person with Harmonix. But anyway.
Oh, Red Octane. Red
Octane.
Yeah, they made the peripherals, and yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
For Guitar Hero, I mean. Cool.
Yeah, so, and it's like DJ Hero is much more like a grungy underground sort of aesthetic of like, oh, we're gonna spin some records and make some cool things happen. Whereas this is much more like, let's go to Coachella and loop some stuff. So it's a different aesthetic. It makes sense why they pick pop songs and things for this certain aesthetic. You're like, hey, you want to loop fun things to play around at Coachella, don't you? That's what you want to do. Here you go. So I feel like that's where it's the it wasn't where I was going. Where I was going. Aesthetic goals, which is why I think they programmed it in a certain way to make it work like that, rather than DJ Hero. I'm gonna stop. That's where my brain is. That's where the drag stop.
But it does bring, you know, it's music, even the music that is like not, you know, played on the radio, right? Like independent music, indie music, whatever, is so tied in with aesthetics. Like, and space, right? And where is it performed? And how is it played, right? Because like, I'm thinking like house parties, right? And bands you have there, right? That aesthetic is different from like going and playing a jazz combo at a cafe, you know, and even if it's like a mile from each other in the same city, the aesthetic is a part of the performance.
Totally.
I agree. I believe that's Red typing in chat. The remix is one of those terms like Redder where you can just contain so many things effectively. And I do agree with that. I don't know if that's just because it's so vague or because it evokes a very specific meaning that can be applied to actions.
At the university that I got my master's at, I was teaching a first year composition class that I themed around remix, talking about rhetoric. Yeah. Basically, you know, making the argument that writing a research paper is essentially like building a remixed song. You know, your labor. It's about the references, right? And you're, you know, creating a new layer of meaning based on those references. I'll never forget the end of this semester. My students were leaving, and like, you know, this was themed remix, okay? Yeah. At the very end of the semester, my students are sort of filing out and saying, oh, you know, thanks for the semester, blah, 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 blah. And one student goes, I get it! Writing a research paper is like a remix! And I was just like, I don't know whether to kiss you or punch you. Are you kidding me? The last day, you finally got it? I've literally said that explicitly. Anyway,
Like I put it in the notes.
it's never too late. It's
PowerPoint.
never too late to get it.
Never too late to get it. There's times where like someone will say something in a Discord chat referencing something else, and I'll just like sit there and think about it, and then I'll suddenly be like, oh, I'm stupid. Yeah, I got that. You referenced something that I didn't quite get. So never really time to
There isn't a lot of time left in this stream. I was gonna raise the implicit anthropological question of, wow, this is a solo activity. They really want you to make. They really want you to feel like it's collective.
What do you mean?
All of these avatars, right? It wouldn't be the same game if you were just playing to a dead room. And so you're stuck in this weird position where, like, oh, I'm the player, and I'm playing to a bunch of people that literally, if I play, like, it doesn't really matter whether I play well or poorly, right? It's just
In the
illusion of
campaign, you
collectivity.
can lose if you don't play very well. Your crowd will turn on you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What do
so,
they do? They throw tomatoes? Like,
No,
They usually let 'em
no, they just
do
boo.
stuff.
They just boo and you lose.
Yeah.
Sort of very Rock Bandish.
Yeah.
You get like a, I don't know, like a tape winding up kind of sound.
Like record scratch, like.
No, I wish. A big gong noise.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ren raises an interesting point, and I think it kind of goes back to what the aesthetic, the feel that they're going for, because they want you to feel like, oh, hey, I'm Skrillex at Coachella or whatever. I'm just saying
Totally.
Coachella because I don't know, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas like Rock Band wants you to kind of feel that rock star experience of playing in dive bars, and then hey, maybe you're on an actual stage, and then maybe you're actually in a stadium playing to a bunch of people, and having the audience there is that like, oh well, even if they're programmed, it's still adding to the experience of it.
I'm just goofing off now. I'm just hitting buttons.
Well, that's A-okay. We're almost done.
that's all music is, right? Just hitting buttons.
Just hit your buttons. Do your rotation.
This is gonna play us out.
Fade
right.
to black. It's lunch zone.
That's a lunch zone.
That's a wrap.
Yeah, I'm just gonna sit here and chat with you guys for the last couple
Go for
minutes.
it.
But thanks so much for joining us. This has been really great. It was everything I hoped it would be as far as the discussion goes.
Yeah.
You guys like hit everything.
We talked about fan culture. We talked about fan culture. We talked about fan culture.
Yeah.
We also talked about Anna Kendrick.
Oh, that's
and,
true.
And Twilight.
You
A
get
little
the
bit.
three
That's right,
community
the butt plugs.
engaged media in a room with FUSER.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna happen.
I'm sort of so. I don't know. This is probably not the way to wrap everything up, but this really weird association I made with this game early on was feeling like I'm playing Cards Against Humanity, which we can leave sort of the larger cultural significance of that on the wayside. But the idea is that people feel funny when they play Cards Against Humanity, right? But it's not really them being funny. It's the game being funny, if that's the whatever, right? You just play cards that are already there. And I feel like in a lot of ways, that's what this game does.
Mm-hmm.
To maybe there's a difference of degree, but I don't think it's a difference of kind anyway.
I think that's a great point because I totally understand what you're talking about. Because there's the good games of Cards Against Humanity. You feel funny and you feel engaged, and you're like, oh, I'm cracking jokes, but like based on cards and things.
Uh-huh.
But the bad Cards Against Humanity, you feel super awkward because you don't know the people you're playing with very well. So you're like, well, can I play that? Who am I playing to? But yeah, good. I can totally understand the correlation between good Cards Against Humanity games and FUSER, because like the game is what gives you the funniness, and you just kind of piece it together to make the good or funny or the bad or funny.
Yeah, and it's sort of the game's job to be funny. I think maybe thinking about Cards Against Humanities and Apples versus Apples or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Apples to Apples.
Apples
I think
to apples, yeah.
like to me it's it's easier to be funny in apples to apples because you are able to sort of subvert what the game is trying to do. But Cards Against Humanity is already trying to be subversive, so it's hard to subvert that, you know? And so like I can make a funny answer in apples to apples that sort of breaks the game. It's almost like metagaming if we want to go there.
Yeah, the whole point of the game is to you play your card and you justify it.
Yeah.
And that's how like sometimes I play Cards Against Humanity that way, but also like if you just didn't the matching up the verbs to adjectives and things, if you play two awkward cards together, you're just not going to win.
Right, yeah. All right, well, hey, that's our time. It's 2:00, so we've done this for an hour and we can quit. They will let us out of our rooms and we can see the sunshine.
Stuart, Thomas, can you open the door now?
We're done. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Catch us on twitch.tv. Why am I saying that? You're here already. We're also got YouTube on a blog. Yeah, all right. Cool. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye.